There's a kind of peace that doesn't come from truth, but from sedation. A sweet, soft numbness that wraps itself around the soul like warm fog. It feels like alignment. It sounds like wisdom, but it lulls the spirit into forgetting why it came here. And maybe, without noticing, you've tasted this kind of comfort too. The kind that makes no demands, asks no questions, and promises everything without ever changing anything. You hear the phrases everywhere. You're already abundant. Just feel good. Let go and allow. They sound true. They echo what your heart longs to believe, but there's something missing in them, something hollow, like sugar pretending to be nourishment. You take it in, it lights you up for a moment, but then nothing changes. Not really. And the silence that follows feels even heavier than before. That silence carries a question you don't want to answer. Am I actually growing or just feeling better about standing still? Neville Goddard didn't teach imagination as a way to escape life. He taught it as a sacred responsibility, a force to be wielded with clarity and intention. He wasn't interested in soothing the ego. He wanted to awaken the God within, and that God doesn't ask for comfort. It asks for creation. Not the kind that comes from passive waiting, but the kind that demands discipline, assumption, and the mastery of inner vision. He never said, just feel good. He said, feel the wish fulfilled. That's not a casual emotion. That's a vibrational decision that rewires your being. But our world today doesn't reward depth. It rewards clicks. It rewards speed. It rewards content that feels like a hug, but acts like a sedative. The algorithm doesn't care if you transform. It cares if you watch till the end. And so we're surrounded by voices that promise ease, but never evolution. The spiritual marketplace has become saturated with soft pillows and no mirrors. And that's the real danger. Not that we're being lied to, but that we're being comforted out of our power. Dr. Joe Dispenza explains that every time we repeat the same emotional patterns, we carve grooves in the brain. These grooves become our comfort zones, familiar, predictable, safe. When we use spiritual cliches to soothe discomfort, we wire ourselves to feel enlightened, without actually embodying change. The body relaxes, the mind calms, but the identity stays the same. The inner chemistry doesn't shift. And manifestation isn't just about thinking new thoughts. It's about becoming someone new down to your cells. Imagine your soul is hungry, not for sugar, but for substance. For truth that feeds your expansion, not just your ego. Comfort is like spiritual candy. It gives a quick high but leaves your power undernourished. Truth, on the other hand, is like ancient nutrition. It's raw. It's rich. It's not always easy to swallow, but it builds something lasting in you, something real. It makes you stronger, clearer, bolder. It reminds you of who you were before the world taught you to play small. And so here is the invitation. Not to reject comfort, but to question its source. Not to stop feeling good, but to ask, is this feeling feeding my becoming or sedating my becoming? Because real manifestation requires inner accuracy, not emotional anesthesia. Real change doesn't always feel safe. It often feels like standing naked in front of a mirror, seeing what you've avoided, and choosing to love yourself into alignment anyway. Feel your breath now. Notice how it moves without effort. This is where your real power lives, in the subtle, sacred space between awareness and choice. And in that space, there is a deeper kind of comfort waiting. One that doesn't sedate you, but awakens you. One that doesn't numb your truth, but sets it on fire. This is not the comfort of illusion. This is the comfort of remembering who you truly are. And that changes everything. Sometimes what feels like relief is really resistance in disguise. The soul knows when something is real. It recognizes truth not by how pleasing it sounds, but by how deeply it awakens. Yet we live in a time where the deeper truths have been dressed down to fit into sound bites, where sacred wisdom is filtered through market trends and turned into slogans that soothe the heart, but don't stretch it. And so we consume, video after video, quote after quote. We hear that we're creators, that we're abundant, that the universe loves us, and we nod, we smile, we share. But inside, something stays still. Something resists, because when truth is overly simplified, it becomes spiritual anesthesia. It doesn't demand engagement, it doesn't require presence, it just wraps itself around the discomfort and numbs it. That's the unseen danger. When teachings are reduced to feel-good affirmations, They no longer challenge us. They no longer sharpen the sword of discernment or deepen the well of perception. They lull us into dependency on the teacher, on the voice, on the momentary high. And what could have been a door becomes a loop. We keep coming back for more inspiration without realizing we're walking in circles. It's easy to confuse emotional comfort with alignment, but comfort isn't always confirmation. Sometimes it's avoidance. Sometimes it's the mind saying, let's stay here where it's familiar. Let's not reach into the unknown. But evolution doesn't happen in the familiar. It happens at the edge, where the current you meets the you that's trying to emerge. And that emergence is rarely gentle. It shakes, it stirs, it questions everything you've believed about who you are. Historically, even the most sacred paths lost their potency when they tried to please the masses. When the mystery was made marketable, depth became doctrine, and revelation became repetition. The divine was no longer an inner revolution, it became a routine. And now, even in modern spirituality, we see the same pattern. Teachings meant to ignite are watered down to entertain. So pause and ask yourself, what do you believe that brings you comfort, but secretly keeps you from risking more of yourself? Maybe it's the idea that everything is meant to be. Maybe it's the belief that alignment means ease. Maybe it's the thought that you don't need to do anything, that the universe will figure it out for you. These sound kind. They feel soft. But softness is not always love. Sometimes love is confrontation. Sometimes love is the moment you stop hiding behind safe thoughts and finally meet your own becoming. The truth, when it's real, doesn't always go down smoothly. It burns on the way in, but not to hurt, to cleanse, to strip away the illusions. Imagine sipping a wine that once held sacred strength, but has been diluted with water to make it more palatable. It still carries the scent. It still carries the label, but the essence is gone. The potency is gone. That's what happens when we turn depth into decoration. It looks spiritual, but it no longer transforms, and transformation is the whole point. You're not here to feel safe inside an echo chamber of comforting phrases. You're here to remember who you are and become it with every breath, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it trembles, because only then does the illusion break. Only then does the real begin. The mind craves certainty, like the body craves warmth. It looks for resolution, for clear lines, for answers that settle the unknown. But spiritual truth doesn't always offer that. It lives in paradox. It speaks in symbols, and it often invites you to sit with more questions than conclusions. Yet in a world designed to reward quick answers, your brain begins to treat understanding as the finish line, when in truth, it's only the doorway. Every time you hear a spiritual phrase that feels familiar, the brain lights up. Dopamine is released. You get that gentle hit of pleasure. Yes, I've heard this, I get it. But there's a danger hidden inside that pleasure. The danger of false completion. Because understanding isn't the same as transformation. Knowing the path isn't walking it. And when your spiritual growth becomes a dopamine loop, chasing the high of insight instead of the depth of embodiment, you start mistaking stimulation for awakening. This is called cognitive closure, the impulse to solve a mystery too quickly, just to stop the discomfort. The moment an idea feels too abstract, too complex, too contradictory, the mind rushes in and tries to wrap it in something simple, something familiar. But spiritual evolution often asks you to sit inside the discomfort, to feel the itch of the unanswered, to hold the question without forcing the answer. In this way, quick-fix spirituality isn't just emotional, it's neurological. It hijacks the same circuits that social media does. Each quote becomes a like, each affirmation becomes a notification, each teaching becomes a scroll of temporary relief, and all of it keeps you from the deeper work, the work of becoming the person who can live the truth, not just hear it. So imagine this instead, not rushing to understand, not trying to wrap every insight in a bow, but allowing yourself to rest in the in-between, to let the unknown stretch you. That's what builds spiritual muscle. That's what rewires the nervous system to hold more light, more contradiction, more truth. It's like training in a new language. At first, your tongue stumbles, your thoughts resist, but the more you stay in the unfamiliar, the more fluent you become in the invisible. Because if your mind is never stretched, it atrophies. It becomes sharp at repeating, but dull at perceiving. It becomes good at quoting, but poor at becoming. And in that stiffness, the sacred cannot move. So breathe into the space between knowing and becoming. Let yourself not understand. Let yourself stay in the friction, because it's in that friction that your next identity is being formed. Not from ease, but from presence. Not from clarity, but from courage. The courage to remain whole, even when you don't have all the answers. There's a quiet distortion happening, a bending of sacred truth until it becomes something softer, easier, and far less transformative. The law of attraction, once a call to inner mastery, has been reduced in many circles to little more than wishful thinking. And though it wears the clothing of consciousness, it no longer asks you to become the person your vision requires. It simply invites you to hope, to want, and to wait. But Neville never taught waiting. He never taught hoping. He taught assumption, vibrational embodiment. To feel the wish fulfilled wasn't to sit back and dream. It was to step into a new identity so fully that the outer world had no choice but to conform. Yet what we often see today is the opposite, a culture of spiritual spectatorship, where the desire for change replaces the work of becoming and the fantasy of abundance substitutes for the frequency of it. This is the half-truth trap, the part of the teaching that feels good but is missing the part that activates. You hear just believe but not live as if. You hear visualize but not discipline your inner conversation. And so you imagine yourself wealthy but speak lack. You see yourself in love but embody fear. You declare the new but maintain the habits of the old. True creation doesn't arise from imagining more. It arises from becoming more. The self that is truly manifesting has different speech, different posture, different priorities. It's not about pretending. It's about syncing your identity to the version of you who already has what you claim to desire. This isn't fantasy. It's frequency. And frequency is precise. It doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are being. It's like typing a command into a computer that isn't turned on. The words may be perfect, the intention may be pure, but nothing happens because the system isn't activated. And that's what imagination without identity is. Unpowered potential. The vision is there, the clarity is there, but the self is still out of alignment. And when the self is out of alignment, the universe echoes confusion. So let the mirror be honest, not to shame you, but to invite you. Invite you to synchronize not just what you think, but what you are. Align your inner posture with the reality you seek. Walk through the day as the one who already knows. Speak not from need, but from embodiment. Assume not with desperation, but with the quiet authority of someone who's already arrived. Because manifestation isn't magic, it's magnetic, and your magnetism is tuned not by your wishes, but by your self-concept, not by your prayers, but by your energetic habits. And when those habits shift, reality follows, not always instantly, but always inevitably. There is a difference between healing and hiding, between awakening and escaping. And in today's spiritual landscape, that line is often blurred, because we're not just in a search for truth, we're in a marketplace where every emotion can be monetized, where every pain can be packaged, and where what once was sacred is now sold as sedation. What used to be a path inward has become a product, and the more digestible the product, the more it spreads. You see it everywhere, quick hits of enlightenment, bite-sized teachings, inspiration on demand. But beneath the surface, something is missing. There's no soil, no root, just a cycle of consumption that never calls you to apply what you've received. It rewards feeling better, but not becoming better. This is the psychology of spiritual consumption. We buy the illusion of progress. We stack up books, courses, meditations. We collect concepts like trophies. But inside, nothing is shifting. Because these teachings are being used like narcotics, not like invitations. They soothe the ache without addressing the cause. They distract from the discomfort instead of pointing us toward the doorway hidden inside it. And the irony is, many of the souls drawn to these messages are ready for more, ready for fire, ready for truth. But they've been trained to equate depth with complexity and pain with failure. So when a message pierces, they scroll. When a teaching demands, they retreat. And the sacred becomes diluted into entertainment, consumed not to transform but to escape. That's where the fracture begins, When insight becomes entertainment, your transformation slows, because the nervous system doesn't just respond to what you know, it responds to what you live. And living requires decision, discipline, space. You cannot embody 20 teachings at once. You cannot align with 5 different frequencies at the same time. Clarity doesn't come from more, it comes from integration. So choose one thing, not forever, just for now. One idea, one vibration, one spiritual law, and live it. Not as a theory, but as your rhythm, your standard, your way of seeing. Because when you apply one truth fully, it unlocks more than 100 you've only heard. It becomes part of your chemistry. It becomes a new signal you broadcast into the field. Imagine your soul being fed a diet of spiritual junk food. It tastes good. It fills the moment, but it leaves you hungrier each time. Your body knows when it's not being nourished. So does your energy. And if you're honest, you felt that ache, that sensation of spiritual fullness, but energetic emptiness. That's the sign. Not that you're failing, but that you're ready to detox, to fast from information, to stop consuming and start becoming. Because real growth doesn't ask for more input. It asks for more embodiment. And that begins the moment you choose depth over distraction, truth over trend, nourishment over stimulation. The moment you stop chasing a feeling and begin living a frequency. There is a strange illusion that takes hold in the spiritual path, the belief that knowing more means being more, that the accumulation of insight somehow equals transformation. But knowledge is not identity, it's only potential. And unless it is metabolized by your actions, your choices, your frequency, it remains a library you never enter, a script you never perform. The intellectual ego is quiet, polished, even humble. It tells you, I've studied, I understand, I've heard this before. But this knowing becomes a veil, a subtle armor, because the more you know, the more you can hide behind it. And while your mind expands with concepts, your life remains untouched by them. You become fluent in spiritual language, while staying a stranger to spiritual embodiment. Neuroscience confirms what the soul already senses. Information not applied fades rapidly. Within 48 hours, most of what you consume is forgotten, unless it is acted upon. Unless it changes your breath, your tone, your decision-making. The body remembers through behavior, and behavior is the language of belief. If you want to know what you truly believe, look not at your notes, but at your patterns. Neville said, test the law, not memorize it, not debate it, but test it. Turn it into your private laboratory, your living prayer. Speak the assumption into your coffee. Walk the vibration into your conversations. Don't wait to feel ready. Readiness is the result of embodiment, not the requirement for it. And the more you practice this alignment between what you know and how you live, the more seamless the bridge becomes between insight and identity. There is a method. It's simple but not easy. Learn, apply, observe, reflect, and repeat, again and again until the behavior mirrors the revelation, until what once felt like a breakthrough becomes your baseline, until truth is no longer something you remember, but something you radiate. Imagine standing at the edge of a pool. You've read every manual on how to swim. You've watched videos. You've talked to experts. You've memorized the stroke, but you never enter the water. And when life finally throws you in, all that knowledge evaporates into panic, because the body was never trained, the breath was never disciplined, the truth was never practiced. That's how many live their spirituality, well-informed but unprepared, inspired but uninitiated. And yet it only takes one act of courageous embodiment to shift everything. One moment of aligning your actions with your knowing. One choice that says, this is who I am now, not because I've said it, but because I've lived it. And from that moment on, the gap begins to close between who you think you are and who you are becoming, between theory and truth, between potential and presence, because embodiment is the only real proof, the only real magic, the only real transmission, and it's already waiting inside you, to be lived. There is a strange comfort in letting go of control, in telling yourself that what happens is meant to happen, that the universe decides, that life will unfold on its own. And while there is wisdom in surrender, there is also danger in using it as an escape, because some forms of surrender are not spiritual, they are psychological. They are the mind's way of avoiding responsibility while calling it faith. Many carry the silent belief, If I don't take control, I can't be blamed. If I just let go, then I won't feel the sting of failure. And so, we cloak passivity in sacred language. We say, whatever is meant for me will come. We whisper, the universe knows better than I do. But deep down we're not trusting, we're retreating. We're not flowing, we're avoiding. We're not aligned, we're afraid. This is the pleasure of powerlessness. It's soft, it's seductive, it makes you feel safe, because it tells you you don't need to choose, you don't need to declare, just wait, just hope, just float. But you didn't come here to float. You came here to direct, to assume, to imprint your intention upon the field of infinite possibility. Neville never said, leave it to the stars. He said, live from the end. That is not surrender, it is authorship. True surrender is not about letting go of vision. It's about letting go of resistance to vision. It's not about silencing desire. It's about removing the doubt that keeps it distant. But when you surrender your role in creation entirely, you don't rise, you vanish. And your manifestations become random, unstable, delayed, because nothing is being grounded through your assumption. There's a hidden form of laziness that wears the costume of humility. Who am I to ask for more? If it's meant to be, it'll happen. These seem like modest thoughts, but in truth they are programs, installed by fear, scarcity, or past disappointment, and as long as they run beneath your surface, they generate a frequency of withdrawal, not openness, not receiving, but resignation. So look gently at what keeps repeating in your life, what shows up again and again in slightly different clothes, what disappointment keeps returning, not because you're cursed, not because you're broken, but because something in you is still projecting power outside of yourself. Something in you is still waiting for permission from the universe instead of granting it from within. Imagine a pilot mid-flight. Suddenly they step away from the controls and say, the wind knows the way. It sounds poetic, but it's not wisdom, it's abandonment. You are that pilot, and your assumptions are the navigation system, not rigid, not mechanical, but precise, intentional, energetically sovereign. So yes, surrender, but only after you've chosen, after you've assumed, after you've aligned. Then let go, not of your power, but of your interference, because the universe doesn't respond to helplessness. It responds to coherence, to conviction, to the silent certainty of someone who knows they are the cause and not the consequence. There's a kind of fracture that doesn't show on the surface. You might not see it in your words, or even feel it in your emotions, but it lives in the space between who you are and who you pretend to be to feel safe. And every time a spiritual teaching tells you to just stay positive or focus only on the light, it may be encouraging that fracture, not healing it. Oversimplified spirituality often splits the self. It teaches you to divide your experience into what's acceptable and what isn't, into what's high vibration and what's not, into thoughts that attract and emotions that repel. But you are not meant to live in pieces. You are not meant to exile the parts of you that feel messy or afraid or dark. You are meant to integrate, to return, to bring the shadow into the light, not deny that it exists. Bruce Lipton speaks of the biology of belief, where your thoughts send signals to your cells. But what he also shows is that incoherent signals, when your mind says one thing and your body feels another, create disharmony, confusion, misalignment. And the universe does not respond to what you think you want. It responds to the totality of your vibration, to the truth beneath the thought, to the feeling behind the words. So when you deny your fear, you don't eliminate it, you simply hide it. And hidden emotions don't disappear. They direct. They operate your frequency from behind the curtain, and that's why sometimes, even after all the affirmations, something still feels stuck, because the part of you that needs to be seen is still being silenced. Healing doesn't mean eliminating the shadow. It means making space for it. It means recognizing that your fear is not a flaw, it's a doorway, that your anger is not low vibration, it's information, that your sadness is not a block, it's an invitation to reconnect. Not every sacred moment feels beautiful. Some feel raw, some feel heavy, but that weight is the soul asking to be witnessed. Take a breath, and imagine your fearful self sitting across from your visionary self. Let them speak, let them meet, because integration isn't about perfection, it's about wholeness. And wholeness doesn't require that you always feel good. It requires that you always feel true, that you allow your entire being to take its place in the process of becoming. When you live only in light, you become incomplete, a song missing its lower notes. It may still sound sweet, but it lacks resonance, depth, power. You are not here to become perfect. You are here to become real, and reality holds everything: the joy, the ache, the doubt, the desire. Not one of these is outside your spiritual path. Each is part of the sacred unfolding that reveals your true alignment. The path back to coherence begins when you no longer reject yourself in the name of positivity, when you remember that the universe isn't asking you to feel good all the time. It's asking you to feel fully, to embody fully, to be one within yourself. And from that oneness, creation becomes inevitable. Not all stillness is sacred. Sometimes, what feels like peace is the body's way of shutting down. You stop reacting, not from mastery, but from exhaustion. You call it detachment, but beneath the surface you're frozen, not feeling less enlightened, just less alive. The nervous system, when overwhelmed, enters a freeze state. You look calm, you speak softly, but inside, nothing moves. And in modern spirituality, this shutdown is often mistaken for alignment. It's not. Real peace is not silence born from suppression, it's the result of inner authority. Neville never taught apathy. He taught assumption, which requires imagination, energy, emotion. Peace was not emptiness, it was power under control, and power requires feeling, engagement, presence. Picture a frozen lake, beautiful, untouched, but lifeless. True peace is the lake thawed, fluid, deep, responsive. It doesn't fear movement, it allows it. Let your calm be alive, let it breathe, shake and stretch, because peace isn't the absence of emotion, it's your ability to stay connected while everything moves. That's the kind of stillness that creates worlds. Some voices sound like truth, not because they are, but because they speak with certainty. Charisma becomes clarity, confidence becomes credibility, and slowly, without realizing, we begin to trust the voice more than our own intuition. We give away discernment in exchange for belonging. This is the halo effect, the illusion that someone's presence, popularity, or eloquence makes them right for you. But Neville never asked to be followed. He asked you to test, to verify, to imagine. Because real power doesn't come from others validating your beliefs. It comes from you seeing evidence within your own life. When you adopt another's truth without inner verification, you wear it like borrowed glasses. They may see clearly through it, but you see distortion. You start shaping your path based on what moved them instead of what moves you. And over time, you lose touch with your own inner compass. True spiritual maturity begins when you pause before believing. When you feel the resonance in your body, not just the appeal of the message. When you choose internal evidence over external approval. Because the most awakened guidance doesn't make you follow, it makes you remember. It returns you to yourself, where the real teacher has always been. In a world echoing with borrowed truths, it takes courage to listen to your own, to not just repeat what resonates, but to refine it inside your lived experience, to remove the layers of imitation until only what is yours remains. True spirituality is not conformity, it's rebellion. A rebellion not against others, but against every part of you that once outsourced wisdom. Neville stood as a model of inner authority. He didn't speak for the masses. He spoke for the one willing to go inward, where no guru, no book, no video can reach for you. Authenticity often feels lonely before it feels liberating. You might feel misunderstood, misaligned with trends. But that isolation is refinement. It's the silence that lets your real voice return, the one you didn't learn, the one you remembered. Imagine tuning into a frequency so pure it cuts through all static. That's what happens when you think for yourself, not with pride but with presence, not to oppose but to align. This isn't about rejecting guidance. It's about knowing that no external voice, no matter how luminous, can replace your own knowing. And once you claim that, no echo is louder than your truth. Truth isn't supposed to be comfortable, it's supposed to awaken you. Truth doesn't arrive to comfort you, it arrives to wake you. And often, that awakening feels like fire. Not because it harms, but because it burns through illusion. Neville never offered ease. He offered responsibility. Imagination wasn't for escape. It was for creation, conscious, disciplined, embodied. Bruce Lipton reminds us, the body responds not to what feels good, but to what's real. Comfort without congruence leads to decay. You can speak abundance, but if your energy speaks fear, the body listens to fear. So let go of the need to feel good all the time. Let yourself be stirred, questioned, challenged, because what confronts you today may liberate you tomorrow. Don't collect teachings, live them. Don't seek safety, seek alignment. Truth isn't soft, it's sacred. And it doesn't arrive to protect your old self. It arrives to reveal the one who was always whole, already ready, already here.